Hi everyone, and welcome to the Knit California channel. My name is Leslie. I am Knit California here on YouTube and also over on Instagram and TikTok, and today I'm giving you my January yarn stash update. It's been a good 6 months at least since my last yarn stash update. I think I posted that in May of 2023. That was an interesting video. You can go back and watch it if you'd like. I was in a really weird headspace in regards to my yarn stash. I was like overwhelmed with it. It was stressing me out. And now here where we're at, I'm feeling much better about it. So I'm excited to talk to you about my yarn stash today. I am going to give you the stats of kind of the fluctuation of my yarn stash in 2023. I've been keeping track of some things like, you know, where I started the year, where I ended the year, how many skeins let me see, what do I have? How many skeins I used in knit projects, how many skeins I destash, how many I purchased, how many were gifted to me, how many I used that were purchased last year. I'm just rambling, but I've got some really interesting stats that I wanted to share with you that I thought you might be interested in as well. I need to reset my Google Sheets template that I use to keep track of my yarn stash. So I figured I would walk you through how I do that and show you how I track some of the things in my Excel sheet. And then I'm thinking of maybe doing a little bit of yarn stash reorganization. So I would take you along with me as we do that. So hopefully this is going to be a fun and interesting video. And yeah, let's get started. So I'm going to start with some of the statistics from 2023. So the first thing to kind of talk through is I did have a goal for my yarn stash to have a net negative stash by the end of 2023. What that meant for me was I wanted to end the year with less skeins than I started the year. This goal died pretty quickly in 2023. I did not achieve this goal. So I started the year with about 335 skeins and I ended the year with about 480 skeins. So what is that? About 150 more skeins in my stash. It is what it is, guys. We're not taking the time to be stressed out about it anymore, to associate any negative connotations with this number. It is what it is, and I'm okay with it, so I'm hoping you're okay with it too. You better be. Okay, how many skeins did I use in knit projects? I used about 120 skeins last year in knit projects. And I destashed about 127 skeins. Plus there's another 49 skeins that I have like out of the shelves and in tote bags that I have posted to destash and that haven't sold or that I would like to destash in the near future. So that's a lot of skeins like out of my stash. What I really like about this is it means that there is some rotation of like stuff coming out, new stuff coming in. Of course, with that like final number of where we're at, about 480, it does mean there is a good amount that is kind of just staying in the stash. But one thing that I do is about on a quarterly basis, I do go through my whole stash and I check to see if there's anything that I want to destash, that I want to get rid of, that I know I'm not going to use anytime soon, and that I think, you know, would be served better if it went to a more loving home. So that is something that I like to do on a regular basis, and it helps, again, make sure that all of the skeins in my stash are ones that I truly love. I talk about it sometimes as like my yarn library or my personal yarn shop. I want to like curate this yarn collection to be perfect for me and exactly what I want to see on my shelves and what I want to use. So what this breaks down to from 2023 in terms of number of skeins purchased, it's about 320 skeins purchased in 2023. Of those 320 skeins, I used 88 skeins last year. So I think that's also interesting to look at, is like how many are getting used like almost right away versus how many are coming in and like sitting on the shelf for long periods of time. I also had about 53 skeins gifted to me, so I really appreciate all of those that were gifted to me as well. And I used 13 of the skeins of the 53 that were gifted to me. So what that really tells me is I'm doing a bad job of using yarn that is gifted to me. I would really like to do a better job. You know, if a yarn dyer or someone is going to gift me some yarn, I really want to do better this year at getting it into a project as quickly as possible. And I think that'll just make me feel better, make sure I'm using, you know, what's being gifted to me and not just letting it sit on the shelves. So the other thing I tracked was the brands that I have in my stash. You'll probably notice I do have a lot of like indie hand-dyed yarn. That is the majority of what I buy. It's just the majority of like what I like using at this point. So that's the majority of what's in my stash. The most used brand, so the most knit brand from 2023 for me was Explorer Knits and Fibers. I used 22 skeins. Second was Sorella yarn. I used 15 skeins. And third, this is not a hand-dyed yarn company, but Knitting for Olive. I used 22 yarn skeins. So those are the stats from my yarn stash. Again, I just think it's like super interesting to go through all of that, see the numbers coming in, the numbers going out, how things are going out, how things are coming in, and I track all of that in my spreadsheet. So just a little bit of background before we get into and I show you the view of my spreadsheet. I started using this spreadsheet actually at the end of 2022. Really, 2023 was the full year that I started using it. And I got this template from my friend Ashley. She is at Ben Knitter on Instagram. She created this template around the same time. I think we were the first two to use this. I was chatting with her on Instagram and I was like, I'm gonna like make an Excel spreadsheet to like track my whole yarn stash. And she was like, oh, I already have a template. Let me send it to you. And I was like, okay, perfect. Thank you. This is amazing. So I have taken her template, I have changed a couple things just to make it work better for me and for my brain. I think that's totally fine when you do that. And if you're interested in tracking your own yarn stash this way in a Google Sheets format, Ashley does have a download link on her Instagram profile in her stories. So just a couple caveats. It may take about 24 hours for her to respond to your request. So give her the time. She's just one person. She has to manually send everyone the link. So you don't need to spam click that button. And also just want to throw this out there. If tracking your yarn stash in this way is like too much, then don't worry about it. Don't do it. I'm a very data analytical brained person. I've got an engineering degree, so I love this stuff, okay? I know it's not for everyone, but maybe it's for you. Okay, so I'm gonna spin around. here's my spreadsheet. I'm going to screen record my view, and I actually think I'm gonna film myself on the other camera so that you can like see my face, so I've got a good angle on this, and I'm gonna show you how I'm copying my 2023 spreadsheet into a new 2024 format. We're gonna clean it up a little bit and go from there. Okay, the other camera didn't work, so you're like next to me, you might be seeing the side of my face for most of this, but that's okay. Okay, so this is, you can see it, my 2023 Knit California IG yarn stash tracker. What we've got are multiple tabs here, so I'll just run you through these really quickly. The first tab, and let me see if I can make there we go. I made the text bigger so you can hopefully see some of it. The first tab is the yarn stash spreadsheet. I keep track of every single skein of yarn. So we've got the yarn brand, the yarn name, colorway name, the yarn weight, what color it actually is, because sometimes the colorway names don't actually match the colors, the fiber content, yardage, grams, and then how many skeins I've got in that, of that yarn. Sometimes it's just one skein, sometimes I've got a sweater quantity and it's 5 or 6 skeins. And then the spreadsheet does the math to tell me how many total yards I have available in the number of skeins I've got and how many grams I have available. I also keep track of the date that it arrived, so the month and the year. Again, this helps me track everything that came in 2023, everything that's coming in 2024. I have a column that I added for whether or not the yarn was gifted to me or not, and then I've got a section for whether or not I have a project picked out for this yarn yet. If I have a project, I say yes. I'll type in the name of the project, and then there's also a column for a link to the project. The cool thing about this is if you hover over the link in Google Sheet, it shows you a photo. So I put in all the Ravelry links and it shows the photos from Ravelry, which is pretty cool. I added this column for category. I was just trying to see, how many sweater quantities I had in my stash versus other quantities. I don't use this column very often. But then the last set of columns here is for yarn that's coming out of my stash, whether it's in a knit project or it's in a D-stash. I'll say how many skeins are coming out, and then it calculates the yardage and the grams out as well. So that's all in the first tab. This is like the master data file, really, is all of the skeins that are in my stash. The next tab, I made a pivot table out of this, and what this does is really just allows me to see all of the brands of yarn that I have in different weights, and then at the end, at the bottom, I have a grand total of how many number of skeins I have in my stash. There are millions of different ways you can set up a pivot table. This is just the way that I have decided to do it. And sometimes I do change this up just to see, different parameters of my yarn stash. But really what I want is the total number here at the bottom. The next is my yarn used tab. I use this to see, okay, what exactly are the skeins that I have used in my stash. There's a section here for D-stash. However, not all of the skeins that I have D-stashed have been counted in my stash. This was something that I did at the very beginning of 2023. When I was setting up this spreadsheet, I pulled out yarns that I wanted to destash, and I did not include them in the spreadsheet. So when I'm selling those yarns or destashing them, some of them aren't in the spreadsheet, but I still want to count them as yarns that I have destashed, so some of the numbers don't really add up, and that's a personal thing. So what really matters here is the yarns that I have used in a knit project. I like to see it by yarn brand, and then I can tell easily and like remember easily what yarn it was by the colorway name. So I track that, and then I've got the number of skeins as well. And at the bottom, you can see I have used 120 skeins of yarn in 2023. The next tab is my destash tab, so I'm just keeping track of every single yarn that I destash and the price that I'm selling it for. And then lastly is another pivot table of yarn coming into my stash. So I really wanted to see for last year, for 2023, how many yarns were coming in each month and what yarn brand they were, and if they were gifted or if I bought them. So that's what this pivot table is showing. It also shows me if they're still in my stash or if I used them. So again, I wanted to see, like, as stuff is coming in, am I using it right away or is it sitting on the shelf? So that's what this is showing. Also in this spreadsheet, I did a whole separate video on this, but this is, I have a tab for keeping track of if I wore my knits in during the year, and I was able to create these fun graphs to show whether or not I'm wearing my knits during the year. I will link that video in the description box down below if you're interested in it. I really track all of this information in my knitting journal, and then at the end of the year I just transferred all of it into this spreadsheet and was able to make these graphs, so it was really easy. And that's it. These last two tabs I don't really use at all. They were just ideas I had at one point, but I don't really use them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a whole new copy of this spreadsheet, and we're going to scrub some of the data to get it ready for 2024. So I figured out if you go to File, Make a Copy, we can make a whole new copy of this for 2024, and there it is. So I've been waiting to do this, but I wanted to film it, so I'm really excited right now. Okay, so first, let's rename our tabs so they are 2024. Oh, sneak peek. I am making a gauge calculator. Rename 2024 stash edit, rename 2024 don't use, rename 2024 stash, rename 2024 stash, rename 2024 and I'm gonna hide these ones because I don't think I'm going to use them. Okay, so let's start here. We gotta rename this 2024. And okay, so what I have been doing, or what I did in 2023, was if I used a yarn or if I destashed a yarn, I kept the line item. Let me do this. Okay, so for example, like I'm finding one that says 0 here in number of skeins. So this Ba Yarns La Jolla in Toasted Neutral, I used this yarn in my Lento sweater. So it was in a knit project. So I keep this line item in here because even though it's 0 skeins currently, like now in my stash after I've used it, it did have the information over here that I used 3 skeins in a knit project. So what we want to do now for 2024 is take out all of these line items that are zeros. Like these yarns are not in my stash anymore. So I'm going to filter by the number of skeins. I want to clear and just select 0. So all of these yarns are not in my stash anymore. This is so exciting. Okay, you can see, so some of these I destashed, Some of these I used in a knit project. Oh, see, look at all my socks cranked by Rachel, Lento. These are all my projects from this year. Some of them are still whips, like my Claire Raglan, but I count the yarn out of my stash when I cast the project on. And that's just a personal preference. I know some people don't count it out of their stash until after the project is done. Just do what makes sense for you. Okay, so anyways, we're gonna delete all of these. So let's highlight all of them. Right click. Delete selected rows. There they are, they're gone. Okay, so now let's unfilter this. So everything that's in here, I have at least one skein in my stash. So let's look over here. Cancel. I've got a couple things that I'm thinking of destashing. Whoops. Okay. Knit project, what's this? My Cal cardigan. Okay, so I do have 2 skeins left of this. I did use it for my Cal cardigan, but these 2 skeins I'm not going to use for my Cal cardigan. I should double check that I still have those 2 skeins. Let's do a highlight here for double check that. Okay, what else do we've got over here? All these oranges, I want to destash those skeins, but they're not out of my stash yet. So now if I come over to my stash pivot, this should have been updated. Yep, that's right. 2024 yarn used. Yep, I haven't used anything yet in 2024. The D-stash. Okay, so I'm going to delete all of this because that was all D-stashed in 2023. These are the yarns that I would like to D-stash still, but they have not sold yet. So we're going to keep those. And 2024 yarn into stash. This, I need to edit my pivot table because I want to change this to year arrived. Oh, I want to change it to year arrived 2024, but I don't have any yet that say 2024, so we're going to have to wait. And then, are you wearing your knits 2024? We are going to delete all of this info. We are going to change the color of these. There's 29 days in February. Oh, you know what? And change the color on those. The pink, that was all of the knits that I had knit last year, but now they're all done. 2023, we're into 2024. Okay. That's really it. I think that's the update on the spreadsheet. Now we're into 2024. Okay, actually, let me come back here to the bottom. So let me sort this again. And then I think I do actually have a couple updates of yarns that have arrived, and I've cast on at least 2 new projects. So we're going to update the yarn. I'm going to take, so what I do is I write down if yarn arrives here or if yarn is coming out of my stash in a knit project. So I need to take these updates and input them into the spreadsheet. That's what we're going to do. So my Bella Filato Studio Cozy Flannel, this right here, I'm going to say 0. I'm making a Cal cardigan, and I'm using this in a knit project, and there's 5 skeins out of my stash. Okay, So that's updated, and this is a 2024 update. I also had some yarn arrive. So it's Treehouse Knits in Dove DK in the colorway Harvest Moon. It's DK purple 100% superwash merino. This yarn. It is 246 yards per 100 grams. And I have 7 skeins, but I actually have started using them already. So this arrived in 2024 January. Yes, my Ingrid sweater. Knit project, 7 skeins. Okay. We need to make sure this updates. Okay, cool. I also had Treehouse Knits, Truffula Cashmere in the colorway Harvest Moon. It's a lace weight yarn. Okay, well, lace, not lave. And it's 81.19 superwash merino cashmere, 316 yards per 50 grams. And I've got 3 skeins. I sort of have a project idea, but it's not fully fleshed yet, so we're just gonna say no. Okay, that's the update. So I do have some stuff. I had one thing. There we go. Yep. Okay, so my 2 projects that I've already started this year. Looks so good. And I should be able to say 2024. Yep, into stash. January, Treehouse Knits, 7 skeins. So yeah, good, good, good. So that's it. That's the update for my spreadsheet. Should we do a little reorganization? Yes. Okay, so instead of doing a yarn stash reorganization right now, I'm really not feeling it. I figured I would bring you over here. I'm actually sitting behind the camera right now and just give you a little bit of a rundown of like what is in my stash and kind of how I organized my cubbies. They're a little bit out of order right now from how I originally planned them to be, but it's okay. We're dealing with it. So, starting in my top right cubby, you can see there's a couple sweater quantities of hot pink yarn, dark green yarn, some rainbow, some gray, some whites. This cubby was supposed to be sweater quantities that, well, this was actually my fall knitting plans, sweater quantities. So I wanted to cast all these on in the fall. Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, 4. The bottom 4, I wanted to cast on in the fall, but did not do that. So they're still there. And then on top of those are new sweater quantities that have arrived recently. The top left hand side is also sweater quantities, like full 5 to 6 to 7 skein sweater quantities. Bringing you down a little bit, the right side cubby is a couple sweater quantities are in there, plus there's some 3 skein, what I'm calling 3 skein sweater quantities, which is really not enough for me to make a sweater, but for some reason I bought only 3 skeins. And then the left cubby also is more 3 skein sweater quantities. I should just call them 3 skein quantities, and then a couple other full sweater quantities. I really wanted to get all sweater quantities in a couple cubbies, but they have started overflowing, so this is where we're at now. If the video starts getting too shaky, I'm sorry. I'm holding the camera now, but we're in the 3rd row down now. The right hand side is like single skeins, 2 skein quantities, things that I wanted to make hats out of, sock skeins, even though I don't really make socks. That's what that cubby is. And then the left side is all my fuzzy yarn. So all my mohair, Surrey, Truffala, there's some boucle in there. I love that cubby, even though it's not super practical for Southern California. I love that cubby. Okay, and then coming down to the bottom, the right side is meant to be my spring and summer yarns. So like my non-wool fibers or my wool blends. This cubby also has gotten some overflow thrown into it. And then the left side is really supposed to be my like skeins I've already used, my scrap yarn and cakes that I've already used. But again, it's got some overflow in there as well. So that is my yarn shelf. I love my yarn shelf. I really do need to do a little bit of reorganization on it, but today's not that day. Alright, so that's the majority of the yarn stash update for today. I wanted to just take a little bit of time to talk to you about my thoughts and feelings and where I'm currently at in regards to my yarn stash. At this point, I'm happy / like neutral with my yarn stash. I'm really I'm really in the mindset where it's not stressing me out. I don't want it to stress me out. I really want my yarn stash to be a place of happiness. I want it to be, like I said before, like a curation of all my favorite colors and favorite yarns and favorite dyers, and really something that I can look at on a regular basis for inspiration. And I'm really happy with where I'm at now with my yarn stash. I do fluctuate through phases of like buying yarn versus not buying yarn. You know, I'm not putting myself on a yarn ban ever, but I do go through phases where I'm just like, I don't want to buy any yarn right now. And I'm kind of in one of those phases currently. I think it kind of goes along with just, you know, it's a new year, there's all this new stuff. I've got a lot of ideas for projects that I want to knit with the yarn that I have in my stash. So when I'm seeing new yarn like on Instagram, I'm not really gravitating towards buying it because I'm like really excited right now for the projects that I do have in mind. And I mean, you saw all the sweater quantities I have in there. I've got plans for almost every single one of those. So I want to start getting through them. And again, I do, you know, just want to mention, I think it's a really good practice for me, and maybe this could be a good practice for you as well. On like a quarterly basis, I do go through and kind of take stock of what I've got in my yarn stash and see if there's anything that I do want to destash or get rid of. Sometimes yarns just sit there for a long time and, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to get to this yarn soon. I don't know what I'm going to knit with it when I do get to it, so maybe it's better if I give it to someone else who is going to love it and who's going to be able to knit something with it right away. So I do think that's a great practice. I like quarterly. I do that. In December was when I did my last big yarn destash. I destashed like 30 skeins of yarn, like out of the house to other people. And I've got a big bag sitting over here full of other yarn that I would like to destash. So just when I get like a burst of inspiration to mail stuff off, I will repost those either on my Instagram stories, or I'm part of a D-Stash Discord group where I can post in there yarns that I would like to get rid of. So it's just a good practice to have. I do have a tentative 2024 goal for my yarn stash, and it is to end the year at less than 500 skeins. The thought is to kind of stay again where I'm at now. Now, looking back to 2023, you know, I had an increase of about 150 skeins. Just like space-wise, I'm looking at my stash now, like I don't have room for 150 more skeins. I'm like pretty much at capacity. Those shelves are full. So I either need to knit like the wind, or like I just don't have a lot more room to be adding more yarn to my stash. So we'll see how this goes. In my notebook, I wrote down, you know, keep under 500 skeins, and then I also wrote down, don't be mad at yourself if this doesn't happen. So I'm not gonna be mad at myself if this doesn't happen. You're not gonna be mad at me if this doesn't happen. We're all hunky-dory with what's going on over here, okay? It's fine. And the last thing I do want to say is that I do know I'm coming from a place of privilege when talking to you about my yarn stash. I do recognize that these are expensive yarns that I'm buying and that I'm showing you. I am in a place where I am comfortable and I am able to spend this amount of money on these yarns, and I know that not everyone is in this space. So take that for what it's worth. But I do love my hand-dyed yarns. So that's where we're at. That's my yarn stash update. I'm thinking I'll come back to you mid-year and we can kind of go through this again, see where I'm at numbers-wise, what I've been knitting up. Maybe we'll do a reorganization at that time. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you were able to get some inspiration maybe for tracking your yarn stash in an Excel spreadsheet. And if you've got any questions, let me know. Hit that subscribe button. Go follow me over on Instagram at KnitCalifornia. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye!